Well, as I speak, wildfires are currently raging across Canada. If you've seen the near-apocalyptic video coming out of Nova Scotia, the thousands of photographs of New York blanketed under a thick orange smoke, or even our nation's capital, you'd be right to assume that it's pretty bad. I mean, it certainly looks that way, doesn't it? But as always, our journalists and politicians already have the answer as to why all of this is happening. Like magic. Spearheaded by the one man in Canada whose ability to turn tragedy into a political weapon is unmatched, that being the utterly shameless Justin Trudeau, the culprit for all of these fires, as they're now telling us, is climate change. Just as well, because climate change is their rallying cry for the modern left. It is their credo. Most importantly for them, however, the seemingly undefinable climate change opens the door for government bureaucrats to get another hit off that sweet, sweet taste of controlling the masses. The media isn't telling you the truth about these wildfires. Now that won't come as much of a surprise to most of you, but let's just get down to it, shall we? For instance, the media isn't going to tell you that wildfires in Canada since 1990 have been steadily decreasing. Have you read that anywhere? I bet you haven't. The government also doesn't want to tell you that the majority of these fires are man-made. Why? Well, it's simple. It goes against their narrative. It would mean that the mighty gods of climate change aren't punishing us for not going to net zero fast enough, whatever that means these days. The media isn't doing their jobs. Millions of Canadians and now Americans are being intentionally misled. And over the next 10 or so minutes, we're going to try and fix that. Drop a like in the video, help us out by subscribing to the True North YouTube channel, and the comment question for the episode is this: will climate lockdowns become a reality in our lifetime? Let me know in the comments, and let's get into it. How does that old saying go? Never let a good crisis go to waste. Well, it's certainly not being lost on Justin Trudeau's cabinet now, is it?
Year after year, with climate change, we're seeing more and more intense wildfires.
And with the accelerating impact of climate change, we very much will continue to do so moving forward.
Part of this is because of climate change, and that we collectively, certainly in Canada and around the world, need to do more and accelerate the fight against climate change.
Clearly, this government has not taken the climate crisis seriously. Their actions show that very clearly. Our country is literally on fire, and this Liberal government thinks that business as usual is fine.
What you just saw was Justin Trudeau, Natural Resources Minister Jonathan Wilkinson, ex-climate convict and current climate change minister Stephen Guilbeault, along with, of course, Jagmeet Singh, immediately blaming climate change for these destructive wildfires. But in reality, what they're doing is advancing their political agenda of high taxation, natural resources destruction, and ultimate and total control over the people during a serious crisis. Now, my favorite piece of climate theater came from Elizabeth May, the Green Party leader, who delivered this rather dramatic statement in the House, followed up by a call to end the Trans Mountain Pipeline. Of course she did. Obviously, it's those greedy oil CEOs that caused the climate change that caused the wildfires.
The Prime Minister is right about this one thing. Climate change is real, but the policies of the current government do not meet the requirements of the moment. We're in a climate emergency. Our eyes are burning in this place. The parliamentary Ottawa bubble has been pierced by the forest fires across this country, and yet in this place, the debates are inane. Please, will the Prime Minister commit to cancelling the Trans Mountain Pipeline, protecting the northeastern slope of Newfoundland from oil and gas development now?
Now, in the United States, the Democrats, just like the Liberals, would never let this crisis go to waste without also trying to advance their own political agenda. Watch as Chuck Schumer delivers his best Justin Trudeau impression on the Senate floor.
These Canadian wildfires are truly unprecedented, and we cannot ignore that climate change continues to make these disasters worse.
And just like in 2020 and 2021, the legacy media, after receiving their marching orders and talking points from the government, are doing their job of regurgitating those talking points. Not doing actual journalism, of course. Take a look at this article from CTV News. Canada's unprecedented fire season linked to climate change will be the new normal, according to scientists. While firefighters work tirelessly to battle the merciless flames and prevent further destruction, scientists say that wildfires are linked to climate change, and this will be the new normal. Now, despite Quebec and Nova Scotia still investigating the cause of the wildfires, the Washington Post, just like CTV News, already happens to know the reason why the fires were started. Of course, it's climate change. Unprecedented Canadian fires intensified by record heat and climate change, according to the Washington Post. The rash of blazes intensified by record heat in many areas is an ominous sign of the ill effects of climate change. Now, if those two headlines don't remind you of what living in 2020 and 2021 was like, well, maybe this might. Take a look at this article from the Ottawa Citizen. It is like we have actually gone back in time to 2020. Look at this headline. Why you should be wearing an N95 mask today in Ottawa. Look at that, the masks are coming back, along with the daily press conferences from the premiers and the prime minister. Just like a time machine, isn't it? Health officials were advising people to wear N95 masks when outside, to limit their times outdoors, and to keep their windows closed and air conditioning on. If you must spend time outdoors, a well-fitted N95 mask can help reduce your exposure. Now, to go with the fear propaganda coming from the legacy media, school boards in areas where the air quality is actually not that bad from the wildfires, like Toronto, are introducing mini lockdowns of sorts, not allowing students to go outside for recess and shutting down all sports and extracurricular activities. Now, one could definitely make a better argument for doing this if you're closer to the actual fires themselves, if your air quality index is actually in high risk. But when TDSB released this statement to parents on Tuesday, well, actually, air quality was at moderate risk. It was not that bad. The legacy media is trying to put the fear of God back into the population. A population that is too afraid to go outside, that is too afraid to take a muzzle off their own face, is not the kind of population that is going to oppose a highly restrictive and controlling government agenda. And that looks exactly like what is happening right now. But here is what the government is not telling you about the wildfires. Despite all the noise coming from far-left politicians and climate zealots that the reason for these fires is climate change and climate change alone, well, there's a far more compelling case to be made about why all these fires are suddenly popping up. And that would be, of course, that they're being intentionally lit by arsonists. In Alberta, the RCMP have charged one woman with 32 counts of arson after she intentionally started several wildfires in late April. Later that month, another Alberta man was charged with 10 counts of arson for doing the exact same thing. Last week, a 28-year-old woman was arrested by the RCMP on Vancouver Island for also setting off a string of fires in the forest. A few days ago, Calgary police arrested a man for setting off a brush fire. In Nova Scotia, the RCMP believed that 3 fires in Pictou County were the result of arson. And now, according to the Toronto Sun, Quebec police are investigating the cause of the wildfires in that province to be arson. According to the Quebec police media officer, as he says, the cause of the fires are suspect. It certainly does seem suspect, doesn't it? Take a look at this video making the rounds on Twitter of satellite imagery showing a series of Quebec wildfires being lit up at the exact same time all across the province. In Alberta, the province most often hit by wildfires, to date this year, over 57% of wildfires have been determined to be the cause of humans. Another 27% of the wildfires are still under investigation, while only lightning accounts for just under 15% of the wildfires in 2023. And according to the Montreal Gazette, over the past 10 years, over 80% of Quebec wildfires were caused by human activity. And like I said at the beginning, the government doesn't want to tell you this rather uncomfortable fact for their political agenda, but the truth is, wildfires in this country have been steadily decreasing since 1990. The worst year, it appears, was 1995. Now, when you take into account that wildfires have been decreasing in Canada, and that the majority of wildfires in Alberta are human-caused, and over 80% of wildfires in Quebec usually are human-caused, and we don't yet have an answer as to what started the Nova Scotia fires, how then can politicians with a straight face blame climate change when the truth is, the data says the complete opposite? All right, ratio of the week time. The winner this week is Gerald Butts, Justin Trudeau's former principal secretary and unofficial left-wing Twitter spokesman. Now, breaking out the old playbook from 2020 and 2021, calling anyone who disagrees with the dominant government narrative a science denier, Gerald Butts went on a tangent attacking someone who questioned him whether or not the fires were really the cause of climate change or arson. Take a look at this. This is a take popular among climate deniers. There we go. That's the language we're talking about here. The fires are worse because of the conditions in the forest. The conditions are caused by climate change. No individual cigarette causes cancer. 40 years of smoking does. Wow, talk about a big brain take from Gerald Butts. It's a slim ratio, but I really wanted to highlight this and share some of the comments that he got underneath this post. 1,152 replies to 1,015 likes. They all count the same. This is from Ben Coates. You don't seem to consider the fact that there are more fires started each year by humans. With that increasing number, the odds of unmanageable wildfire breaking out increases. Also, the number of fires started each year by nature, lightning, stays fairly level. So simple logic dictates that humans are the cause of the increase, not nature or climate. This one from Scott Carpenter got quite a few likes. The forests get dry on a regular basis. In the past, we tended to have fewer fires when those conditions hit because we didn't have eco-terrorists running around lighting them on fire in an attempt to scare the hell out of people who aren't taking their global warming cult seriously. Pretty sure there were a plethora of arrests because they were starting forest fires. There were, and the reality is these arrests are only going to increase. Canadians would be well advised to remember what the real agenda is. To impose a carbon tax on the Canadian people, to reduce Canada's natural resources industry to nothing but a shell of its former self, and ultimately, to take more control for themselves. That's just what governments do. All right, everyone, that's going to do it for us this week on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Harrison Faulkner, and this is Ratio.